Netflix's The Watcher story has left many viewers in confusion, but what you don't know is that Netflix added some scary parts to make it more dramatic. First thing was that the family never moved in. In the limited series, the Brannocks got their first letter after moving in, and they were trying to settle down. They even had many renovations, like fixing the security cameras and changing the kitchen marble while they were already in the house. Then, when the Brannocks and their children started to feel threatened, they had to stay a few nights in a motel with only Dean keeping watch by sleeping in the house. What happened in real life is very different to how Netflix portrayed this. The Broaduses, which is the real-life family that was affected, never moved into 657 Boulevard. Of course, they saw the house and wanted it, and after a few days after they bought it, they got their first letter from the Watcher. According to Reeves Weedman, a reporter who wrote about the Watcher story, he said that the family was living in a neighborhood of the same town and was still staying there while renovating 657 Boulevard. So the most they did was to go into the new house and drop things off, and the first letter they got from the Watcher said 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in, which means they never even got to live in the house as Netflix played it out. With that, the Broaduses were able to conclude that they were never going to sleep inside 657 Boulevard. Karen was made up. Right from the beginning of the series, even when Nora and Dean failed to see it, many viewers could tell Karen had bad intentions. And it's almost convincing that she was the Watcher, especially after she got to live in the building after the Brannocks moved out. But the reality is that Karen is as made up as her annoying fascination for the couples to sell the house. Netflix made her up to spice up the show, and she doesn't exist in real life. Yes, the family used a realtor to get the apartment, but that agent was never friends with the wife, and they didn't hang out as Nora did with Karen on the show. And there was no pressure from the realtor to sell the house cheaper as Karen played it. So everything that played out between Karen and the family wasn't real, as it never happened. Mysterious John Graff. The viewers got introduced to John Graff when the Brannocks were working on the house renovations, and he stunned Dean and the viewers with his approach as a house inspector, who was later discovered to have committed crimes by getting rid of his entire family. To make this mysterious man even more dangerous, he was made to be friends with Pearl and Jasper, who lived next door. So it's surprising they took him in and why John never left the neighborhood. But while some of the facts about John were true, Netflix got some of it wrong. John Graff is the fictional name of the real person, John List. And in 1971, John committed those crimes by getting rid of his mother, his wife, and 3 children throughout the day in Westfield, New Jersey, where 657 Boulevard is located. He later wrote a letter to his pastor and disappeared to remarry in a different state. John wasn't caught till 18 years after his story got featured on America's Most Wanted. So even though John is real, he never committed those crimes in the same house the Broaduses got, but it was in the same town. John was a real guy whose story was used to fulfill a fictional and dramatic point in the Watcher's story: no physical threat. To make the Watcher's story more scary and dangerous, Netflix added more than enough wrong information. The fictional family Brannock was traumatized in the show's first few episodes when they discovered their ferret was brutally harmed and executed. And things became extra from here. Some break-ins happened, especially when a young lady dressed in a similar cloth as John Graff's daughter showed up in Dean's bed. Also, they started to get strange phone calls that followed them even to the motel they stayed at temporarily. Just like the usual Ryan Murphy's scary films, the Watcher's story went hard to make the show get the viewers tense. But in real life, the Broaduses didn't even own a ferret or move in to experience the shocking brutality the pet suffered. There were also no break-ins since they never lived in it. No strange phone calls were recorded, and the only threat to the family that they ever got were the letters, so none of the encounters were physically threatening. No secret tunnels. Towards the end of the film, it looked like the Watcher will be discovered, and viewers can't stop talking about the suspense. While the Brannocks were renovating the house's basement, they discovered a tunnel that led outside to a different apartment they weren't so sure of. To make this even more alarming, they found a bed and someone trying to escape as they entered the tunnel, suggesting someone had been living there the whole time. In a different case, in reality, because there was no tunnel in the house according to Reeves, he said that the Broaduses who acquired the house did a thorough home inspection, especially when the letters started to come in. But they never found any tunnels. In one of the letters, the Watcher asked, "Have you looked in the walls?" This question made the family look into everything that could be hidden about the house, and no secret passageway was ever found, which meant no one else had access to the basement and the house in general. A false family. The Brannocks, the family that received the Watcher's letters in the show, is fictional and has a different name from the real affected couple. Nora and Dean Brannock are the names that got exchanged with Maria and Derek Broadus. Netflix used incorrect details for the couple because they were following their wishes. The Broaduses had requested that Netflix shouldn't use their real names in the show, and that's what Netflix obeyed by using fictional names instead. Aside from the false names that Netflix adapted for the show, there were also requests by the real family to make the portrayal of their family different in the film. So while the real-life family's children are 3 and were below the age of 10 when this happened, the family in the book has 2 kids, with a teenager giving her parents constant problems alongside what the Watcher was already causing the family. Different private investigator. When the Brannocks started getting letters from the Watcher, they went to make reports with the police, but the police couldn't do much to help them due to limited resources. And just like in the Watcher, the real family hired a private investigator to help crack the case, but Theodora Birch was made up to make this show more chilling than it was in real life. The private investigator that the family hired in real life is Frank Shear. Frank was a police officer who became a private investigator upon retirement, and all about him was to find who the Watcher was, which he never got to fulfill. So Theodora becoming friends with the Brannocks in the show and becoming involved in the case even while dealing with cancer was all wrong. And her confession about being the Watcher just to put the family's mind at rest and to give herself peace of solving the case was all false. And according to the reporter Reeves, he was sure that the real-life investigator Frank wasn't a former jazz singer like Theodora was portrayed. The Historical Society. One of the interesting moments of the Watcher's story was the Historical Society's interest in preserving 657 Boulevard by making sure renovations weren't done. In some ways, a part of this is true. There is a historical society that's active in the town and that meets up to stop big changes to houses happening in the neighborhood. However, even though the historical society is real, the neighbors next door to the Broaduses were not a member of this, and they never interfered in little renovations going on in the house at the time. The only time they got involved was when they heard that the family was making attempts to tear down the building, and they were trying to ensure that didn't happen. No dumbwaiter. The dumbwaiter in the show sounded promising the first time it was shown to the family, but this became a nightmare for them. It was in the same dumbwaiter that they found their neighbor, Jasper, while the sister argued that previous owners of the house always allowed him to play in the dumbwaiter. None of these things happened in real life, and Jasper never got into their house to play in it because the house doesn't have a dumbwaiter in it at all. It's just a feature added to make the house appear as old as any creepy old mansion. Previous owners not harassed. To understand what was happening and know if previous owners encountered the same thing, Dean approached one of the previous owners of the building, and the former owner had many details and letters of how he and his family also suffered from the Watcher. The previous owner even had more horrifying details when he mentioned that his son came across the neighbors in a cult meeting where they were eating a baby. But in real life, the former owners of the house were never harassed or threatened by the Watcher. What they got from the Watcher was a sweet letter after they put the house up for sale. The letter from the Watcher was to thank the family for taking good care of the house, and they didn't think much of it, so they disposed of the letter. And when the Broaduses started getting letters when they visited the house, they discovered that the previous owners got one too, which made them sue the former owners, but the lawsuit was later dismissed. So what do you think of the Watcher's story? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching.